Okay, what's up, guys? So today we're going to be talking about HTML, which is kind of the essential building block for when you're trying to create any kind of content on a website. So I've created this folder right here, and inside of this folder, for this example, you're going to want to just create a little basic file. We're going to go index.html, which is going to be our standard, right, basic beginning file. So the thing to remember about HTML is it's not really a programming language per se, in the sense that right in the programming language, you normally have access to be able to do a bunch of different things in any kind of general purpose programming language, like access to the operating system, for loops, variable, right? All of the classical or traditional things you would think about when it comes to a programming language. What HTML stands for is hypertext markup language. And so what it is it's essentially a way to be able to organize the content that's actually displayed onto the website. So the way to think about HTML is whenever you have a website, there's HTML, which is like the actual content, or the videos, right? The words that you're going to see, all the actual meat and potatoes of the site itself. Then you have CSS, which is cascading style sheets. CSS is what that does is it's the actual styling of your content that you have onto your web page. And then normally you have JavaScript right in the engine that's getting run in like Chrome browser and stuff like that. JavaScript is what controls the actual behavior of your website that you're going to have. So content, styling, behavior. So for behavior, you can think in JavaScript, it'd be like, animations. You can do all kinds of things inside of it. Like back in the day, people used to use jQuery much more often, or even Ajax. And so with that, you'd be able to like trade content in and out, do a whole bunch of like styling animations and stuff. But now people normally just go with a Vue library or even a framework like React, Angular, and then Vue.js. So with that kind of laying the groundwork, let's go ahead and dive into this. So the basic way that you're going to create a component inside of HTML is you're going to start with, there we go. Well, here, let me just turn off my Vim bindings real quick. All right. So the basic way that you're going to get started with creating like actual HTML content is you're going to start with this little symbol right here, right? And so this symbol, it's the less than sign, and the less than sign, it signifies the beginning of an actual piece of content inside of HTML. And then normally you'll have this doc type HTML, which just lets the web browser, the web page that you're loading it inside of, know that, hey, the kind of markup that you're reading right now is HTML, and then all of this stuff is markup as well. So you'll see we have this little opening less than symbol right here. Then inside, you're going to have the name of the actual tag that you have. So an opening symbol, the text inside of here, and then a greater than symbol, right? That signifies the beginning of a tag, which is called the opening tag. And then you'll notice they come in pairs. So we've got this one right here with HTML, and then we have this closing one down here with HTML. So both of these say HTML, but this one has a little slash right after the less than symbol, which signifies that that's the closing tag. And so whatever you sandwich in between the opening tag and the closing tag is what's called a nested element. And so your entire web page is going to consist of different elements that are connected together and nested inside of each other. And then you can also, there's like little meta elements or different values that you could put inside of opening tags. These are called attributes, right? So for this, it's just letting them know, hey, this is an HTML, right? HTML page because it says HTML. And then for lang, which just stands for language, you've got the equals and then the double quotes here. And then it's got EN, which just stands for English. So that lets the web browser know, hey, this is an HTML page and the language that this is written in is English, right? So again, just kind of basic things on here. So inside of every HTML tag that you have, it's kind of structured the way that you could think of like a human body. So right here, right after your HTML tag, you're going to have what's called the head tag. And again, less than symbol, head, which is the name of the element, and then the greater than symbol. And then inside, right before, you have the closing tag right here with the little slash. We have our meta attributes. So these are, again, just different general attributes about your web page. So it's just different informational things. So for this, you see the meta tag, name, viewport, content, width equals device width, initial scale 1.0. So just giving the web browser that it's being viewed on like initial information about the actual size and viewing shape of the web page itself. It's letting it know that the char set that it's going to be using is UTF-8 encoded. And then the title. So this is where you would put, right, if you've ever looked at your tabs when you're in Chrome, the text that appears inside of the actual tag itself on your HTML web page, this is where you would specify that. So let me go ahead and pull up a web browser page so you can see this in real time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reveal this in the folder, and we will minimize this, open this up, open with Chrome. And then you'll notice in the URL that we have right here, it's users, Michael Pope, desktop project, 6-figure developer. So it goes to the location of the actual file on your desktop, and you can, again, because Chrome browser is used to be able to render web pages, HTML and all that, it can read all of those things. You can just open an HTML file directly inside of your web browser like this. So let's go back to here. All right, so I'm going to keep this open to the side, and then we're going to keep open VS Code so you'll be able to see it. So, and we don't need this actually to be that wide. We can kind of shorten this up a bit. Same with this, don't really need it to be all that wide. Okay, perfect. Alrighty, so document. So you'll see this as document. So now let's type in here inside of title. We're going to say changed title. We're going to save this file. And then in order to see those changes reflected inside of your web browser after you make those changes, we're going to go ahead and refresh the page. And then you'll see, notice it says change title, right? So cool. This is also where you will store your CSS files in terms of like linking them together, but again, we'll get to that later. Next, what you have is the actual body tag. When this is where, again, the meat and potatoes of your actual website are going to live. We have this H1 tag, and then the H tags, they just stands for header, and they have different sizes. So to illustrate that, I'll show you real quick. You got H1, there's H2, we'll do hello world, right, let's do all the different ones. And we'll save this, and let's refresh. So you'll notice, right, they get smaller and smaller progressively, and that's something that's built in to HTML by default. So each of the different kinds of elements that you would normally see in a web page, there's normally a corresponding HTML element to that particular kind of thing, right? And that it's helpful because what it allows you to do is when you're looking at code, the kind of element that's being used inside of the code, it gives you some information about the kind of content that's being displayed. So this is helpful for web browsers for SEO purposes so that they'll be able to better read and understand what's going on the web page, and it's helpful for developers because they'll actually be able to understand what it is that you're trying to organize your website to do, and it helps them to be able to navigate and read the code a lot better. So let's take this out. Okay, so if we refresh again, back to just write normal HTML like this. Another tag that you'll see that's very common is this, and this is called the P tag right here. P just stands for paragraph, so you'll use the P tag for any kind of just, long form text that you would have. So this is going to be like on your About Me pages when you'll see long paragraphs. It's normally a P tag, and let's just refresh so you can see what it looks like. And let's see if I can stick in lorem ipsum. Yeah, there we go. Save. This is just dummy text that's really standard across like web designs and stuff like that. So there you go. Right, so then just for a basic kind of paragraph that you'll see on most websites, this is what it looks like. So we've got an H1 element here. We've got our P tag, and again, note that at the end of it, it's got the closing tag right here. All right, let's do another kind. We have images. So on an image tag, again, you'll have this lesser than IMG, which lets you know that it's an image. And then this is where attributes are going to start to become more helpful for you, because before, right, and all these other ones, it's just kind of like general information, metadata. You don't really have to think about it too much. But for this right here on an image tag, it actually does something that you'll be able to see the effect of it, right? It's very useful. So this stands for so this is SRC. It stands for source. And what this is going to do is it's telling the web browser that's displaying your image where to find that image at. So you can do this a couple of different ways. The way that this is doing it right here is you'll notice we have this https:// and this is giving it a location, and it's telling it to look up this image that's already hosted somewhere on a website. You can stick that into the source, and then it will display it here, right, just by looking it up on the internet using HTTPS. The other way that you can do this is if you have a file, an actual image, saved inside of your folder here, we could also link it the same way that we're looking up local files like this. You can also look up local files onto your computer. So if we refresh this, you'll see it's this placeholder image. This isn't a real or a live image right now, though. So what we'll do is let's go to Google. And then let's look up, what's just something that would be a basic image. Let's just say placeholder image. Okay, cool. This is a nice one, right? So you'll notice they just give it to us directly right here. So you can just copy this, HTTPS. Let's paste this into here, refresh, and then boom, right at this place. You can also see how this works in real time if you go to Google, and then let's look up computers. So whenever an image is hosted onto a web page, because it's live on that web page, it's that the image itself, right? It's not just the web page that's being hosted, it's also all of the assets and files that go along with it. So if we looked up an image of like a laptop like this, right? This is on, looks like Britannica. When you right click this, you'll notice it says copy image, but you can also copy image address. And if we stick that in here, and actually let's do it on the bottom one. Let's do a separate one. Image, source. Paste this in here. And then we'll say computer image. If you refresh, it's really big because the image itself is pretty large. But you'll see, right? This image that we just pulled randomly off of Google search is now showing up inside of the web browser, right? And so that's showing you just the first kind of primary way that you're able to link images onto a web page using HTML. So now let's do this same thing, except this time we want to save the image. Let me think of something else. What else do we want to look up? Let's do a mountain, right? Just why not? So we can save image as. I'm gonna save this to save it as mountain, right? Okay, so you'll see it just got saved, mountain.jpg. So if I take this, open up cursor again, and then we will or here, we'll just do it inside of the folder. Yeah, let's put it in here. Okay, cool. Mountain.jpg, perfect. So if I go back to our web browser that we have, you'll notice we now have mountain.jpg, and we just downloaded it off of Google, right? So now we can do image, source, but now let's get mountain image, and let's look this up. So whenever you want to look up something, if it's in the same folder, it's pretty easy. All of the lookups are pretty easy, but this is the most straightforward. You can just do ./, which just says, I want you to look starting relative to this file. So index.html, right, is inside of our HTML folder. So it's just saying, hey, look inside of that same folder for what I'm about to tell you to look for. And then we're going to say mountain.jpg or JPEG. So let me put the E in there. Save it. Refresh. mount an image, right? So these are the two different ways that you'll be able to load an image inside of here using HTML. One is through HTTPS lookup. The other is with this relative just file lookup, because it's directly inside of the folder here. And normally whenever you're creating a website, if it's going to be your website that you're actually hosting, you'll have like your assets, and they'll be contained inside of an actual assets folder, and then you'll load them this way, the file way, right? Just because it's quicker to be able to load on the web page, and things like speed of your files and your assets loading is going to be important when it comes to things like SEO. When you want to rank very high on Google, SEO just stands for search engine optimization, and it's the way that you're able to create your web page and the content on your web page in such a way that it makes it easy for a lot of the search engines like Google, Bing, and then Yahoo to be able to find you, right? Which everybody wants to be on that first page of Google, because when's the last time that you ever went to like the second page on a Google search that you did? So if you can get on that first page of Google, that's the best thing to do. So everybody tries to follow the best SEO practices in order to be able to get onto that first page. So again, these are just things that you will have to think about as you're creating your website, and some of the technical things that go into some of the decisions of how it is that you actually set up your code as a software developer. But again, we'll get to SEO and all those kinds of things later on down the course. Right now, these are just kind of to put that in your ear so that you have it in the back of your mind. But this covers images. The next thing that we can do, we've done H1 tags, which are the header tags, which is that primary information that the user is met with. You've got your paragraph right here. You've got images that we've done, and then you can also control different attributes of your image. So just to show you that, I'm going to modify the size of the mountain image real quick, just so that you can see how the attributes. So the next kind of element that I'm going to show you is a div tag. Div. And so a div tag, you can just kind of think of a div tag as like, it's a basic container for really anything that you want to be able to throw inside of it. So oftentimes it's used to group together different items so that different sections of your web page are put together, although there's kind of better ways to do that now with some of the newer like semantic HTML elements that have been added. There's an actual section tag so that you can more clearly define things like that. But this is, again, just for the sake of using it, you'll probably see it pretty often as you do dive into HTML code, is your div container right here. And actually, no, this is some of the same code that we had from earlier. Inside of here, we can just say, I am a div. Right, we'll load that, refresh, and then let's see, style, color red. Oh, it's not showing up. Let's find out why. Body. Interesting. We're not getting anything after. Let's go to save. Oh, it looks like it's taking a while to save it. Oh, that's probably why we didn't get the image before save. Save. All right, I'm just going to copy all of this because for some reason it's not saving. All right, let's open Cursor back up. Okay, cool. Refresh. There we go. Yep. Okay, yeah. So the problem was, for whatever reason, VS Code or Cursor wasn't saving it on my computer. It was supposed to, but it was just having some lagging issues. But yeah, so you'll see here. So to illustrate the boundaries of the actual div element itself so that you can kind of see how it shows up on the HTML page. We have this attribute that's called style. Now, style allows you to be able to insert what's called inline CSS into your element. So inline CSS is, there's 3 different ways of being able to include CSS inside of your actual HTML file. This is the first way I'm showing you right here, which is using what's called inline styling, which is where you put a style tag onto the actual HTML element itself, and then you're able to put in all of your CSS values right here. The other way is through linking a separate CSS file, which we will get to in the actual CSS module itself. And then the third way is you can put what's called a style tag inside of the actual HTML, and then you can write your CSS code in here that way. However, for the sake of this, let's cover what this actually does. So sometimes, and I put this first attribute right here, which just says color red. The reason that I did that is because sometimes when you have your actual HTML file load, you'll have like some default CSS configurations on there, and you'll notice, right, like this background that we have on our HTML page, the background just shows up completely white, right? Like blank space, very normal and very standard for websites. However, sometimes the text, although it should be black, there's sometimes where it'll show up white. And so if you want to be able to check for that, you can just change the actual color like we did right here to something that would show up, or you can change the background of your website. Either or works, but that's what this color attribute does. And so we have color, which tells it what's the CSS attribute that we're trying to change. We have the colon, which is saying here's the value that we're about to give it. And then we're saying red, right, which we're letting it know what color we want the text to be. So this normal color attribute in CSS, this affects just text color. It doesn't affect like background color or anything like that. If you want to affect background color, that's what this one, background dash color, colon, and then blue is. And then you have padding, which just controls the spacing inside of the element, and then margin, which controls the spacing outside of it. But again, we'll cover that more in depth in other CSS, in the actual CSS module itself. And then also, don't forget, it's kind of similar to JavaScript. You have to have this semicolon at the end of your value attributes just to let it know, hey, like I've closed this value off. I'm working on a separate value, because that's what separates color red from background color blue from padding, right? That's how it lets it know, hey, these are complete statements. And this is how it renders again on your web page. So we told it to have a blue background, which it does, told it to have red text, which it also does. And then you'll notice there's these like spacings on the left, the right, the bottom, and the down. That's what that padding and those margin values did. And then here's another cool trick that you can use when you're kind of investigating how things show up on your actual HTML page is when you inside, I'm using Google Chrome, right? But it's similar in most web browsers. If you just right click and then you hit inspect, it'll show you, you'll have this tab. This is called the inspector. This is super, super helpful for developers. This is what you use to be able to look at all of the different kind of underlying background code that's actually going on. You can look under the hood to see what's going on in any website. It'll show you the actual rendered HTML, and you can actually see like the JavaScript files and things like that. But again, for our site, because it's pretty basic, this is all of the code that we have. And then you'll notice we can highlight over different elements, right? And then if you click this right here, you can hover over elements, and it'll allow you to see, right, what's going on, and it'll highlight them on the right side of your inspector. So for this, which is our div tag, it does this helpful thing where it opens up in the inspector and it shows us, right, all of the CSS that we defined. So you'll see that we have color red, background color blue, we got the padding values, and this is really cool. You can even play around with values inside of the inspector. Now it won't save to the website. It'll only be showing it as you're browsing on your website. But if you've ever been like on social media and you've seen things that look like they're, Photoshop, but they were on websites, this is one of the ways that you can do that, right? You don't have to like go into Photoshop and manipulate like the pixels themselves. You can just kind of change up the text inside of the inspector right here, and you can really get it to say whatever. Like for instance, let's try that in, if we go to Netflix. Okay, cool, right? So hit inspect. we'll click on this, right, that I showed you before, and click on this element. Okay, so now you'll see it's highlighted, and it's showing us all the styles that Netflix, they have on their website. And you'll see right here is the text. Well, I'm double clicking it, right? And you can edit it in real time. So if I wanted to say Michael Pope owns Netflix, right? You just hit enter, and then now it looks like on Netflix's official webpage, it says Michael Pope owns Netflix. So let's inspect this again. If I wanted to click on this, click that. Let's say that I wanted to change the actual color of the text, right? Well, what was the name of the attribute that we used before? It's just color. So you can go color, colon, and then let's say, let's make it red, right? Because everything else on here is cool, red, right? So now the text is red, and we've applied our own custom CSS in here. So you can do that again just to be able to play around with changes on your website. If you want to like really quickly kind of rough draft, see how it looks in real time, or even like play with certain attributes, you can do that here. All right. Cool. So back to our main web page. So the thing we were trying to get it to do before with this image tag with mountain, the reason why I wasn't showing up is, again, it just wasn't saving properly, but now it is. So I can show you. So certain elements in HTML allow you to be able to modify the CSS using attributes like this. They're already kind of baked in. So for images, you can modify the width and the height just by using these values right here, right? Attributes on image. So it was 50 before for the width and height. So now I'm changing it to 500. Let's save this, and then we'll refresh. Boom. You'll notice the image got bigger, right? So that's cool. We've covered so far headers. We've got paragraphs, images, divs. I've shown you basic inline styling. Let's see what we want to do next. So this is what it looks like when you actually render an HTML table. So you'll see our header elements that we have right here for the table. We name, age, and then city. Add some actual elements inside here. So you'll notice for this first table row that we have right here, we've got TH. These are like the header elements that we have. It's showing you in the columns across initially, like what are the values going to be. And then we just put in some mock data here. So we have table row, again, TD, and then this is going to be the actual values inside. So then if we refresh, right, John, 25, New York, Jane, 30, Los Angeles, right? So again, just basic examples of those elements. So with those, you've seen a lot of the basic elements that you're going to use whenever you're building a website using HTML. There are other elements, but we will again cover those inside some of the future modules that we have. But these right here, this is enough to get you started with some of the basics. So take this, create these, play around with this, right? See other things that you can do, add your own HTML elements to here, play around with the web page a little bit, and then in the next module, which would be CSS that we will cover, we'll get involved in some styling stuff so that you'll really get to make your website look nice.